So the main problem with a plywood guitar is going to be around the neck pocket. And this is a good example of just that, where there is a little bit of damage. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but there's a little bit of damage right there. And as I was getting the electronics, pickguard and everything off, you can see there's a tiny bit, well, I tightened it, it's hardly there anymore. There's a tiny bit of wiggle, just the tiniest bit in the neck. And some of that was just I tightened it down a little bit. What I'm going to do is reinforce all of this by pulling this neck. And the neck, the pocket is very nice. There's a little bit of separation because I think it fell this way and caused the neck to kind of come up that way. You can also see when you take the pickguard off, there's a tiny little crack right there from putting stress on that pocket. And so what I'm going to do is take the neck off. Very simple, but just take your time. This is always the thing with guitar restoration, especially on older instruments, is take your time. Loosen all four a little bit before you start taking them out. And then I do X. I do corner to corner, corner to corner. And don't use power tools. Do it by hand. Take your time. Be gentle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinforce all of this. I'm going to use my Star Bond. That's my go-to for my restoration work, and it's really great at reinforcing wood because it soaks into the wood and like bonds with it on like a chemical level. And so I'm going to reinforce all of this and reinforce these screw holes in there just slightly, not fill them in, but just reinforce with some drops of that, and that's going to allow the screws to anchor more sturdy, and the neck pocket will be reinforced so there won't be any wiggle with the neck. Alright, so I've got the neck off. Again, I'm very impressed with the beautiful coloration on that fretboard. Absolutely gorgeous fretboard. And it's interesting too that the facade is complete in the sense that it goes all the way around the bottom and everything. There's no seams on that laminate veneer that they have on there. And you can see where the edge of the laminate veneer is, right there where the natural wood grain starts. Very interesting. Very interesting. But very well made. It's, you know, like I said, even though it has that weird laminate veneer, you wouldn't know it just looking at it or feeling it. It's a nice satin feeling neck and has weathered nicely as well. And you can see all the way down to here. Now what I'm going to do is, the way I apply the Star Bond is using a piece of heavy gauge guitar wire, and I dip it in the bottle and get just the tiniest little bits on the end, and I'm going to put it into the holes. The reason being, I'm not filling it. This isn't like wood filler. This isn't anything like that, or caulk or anything, or wood glue. The Star Bond, I'm using the thin fast set, and it soaks into the grains of the wood, so it's not going to fill a lot. It's just going to harden all the wood around it and give it that little bit of extra coating that then when I drive the screws down into it, it's going to bite harder, and the wood around it will be harder. It will be cured with that Star Bond. So that's a great way to reinforce if you got just a little bit of wiggle where the screws, you don't want to over tighten them because you'll strip out that wood, and it'll be, you need even more of that to bring it back. But at this point where it's still holding, but I had that little bit of wiggle and I tightened them in as much as I wanted to, and I said I'm not going to tighten them any further. So that's why I removed it, and I'm going to reinforce with the Star Bond. Now same thing, I'm going to use the same stuff. I don't use it on camera because it's really, you got to be very careful working with it. It's very slippery, it will slide, and even a drop of it hitting something, it's very caustic, so be very careful using it. I don't even like to use it on camera because I don't want to be thinking about being videoed. I want to be thinking about just applying this stuff. I'm going to reinforce the holes here as well, reinforce the back plate a little bit. Again, just drizzling any little cracks or fissures or anything like that, drizzling this into it. It's not going to raise it at all, because it'll slip and slide right down into those holes, just hardening the wood. And especially there's this tiny little bit of crack, tiny little bit of, you see the white right there, it's where the wood's showing, and that's again from it hitting this way. It hit and caused the neck to bend a little bit. It didn't break, but it did put some stress fractures in there. So drizzling this in there, pressing it back and that's going to reinforce all of this and considerably strengthen it. It will also arrest this before it actually breaks off. There is a little chip right there that's wanting to come off. I'm going to drizzle this in behind it and get it good and soaked in there, and then that'll be set. The neck pocket will be set. The neck itself, the holes will be stronger and more, you know, they'll bite better, and so we'll have a much tighter neck situation here. Alright, so I've been busy on this Hondo restoration here, and I went ahead and did a repair on the pick guard. The pick guard had been already broken and previously repaired, and I was just cleaning it up. I actually broke this part back off, cleaned the wound, so to speak, and re-glued it back together with my star bond, and I also cleaned up the top a little bit. It's still not perfect, but it is a lot less noticeable than it was. Another thing that I've been doing is shielding. I've got more shielding on the back, conductive shielding, and in there. I would have liked to do a little more, but I actually ran out of my tape. So I've got more in order, but I'm not going to wait until it gets here. I was getting close to done. The conductive tape is very helpful for reducing noise. You create basically a Faraday cage, and you see I've got it running over the top here so that it'll also connect into what is on the back of the pick guard, because the larger that is, the more grounding you're going to get, and I've also got it running down and connecting into the ground on the back there of the tremolo system. And so I've got this all cleaned up there, and I've also reinforced all around the neck pocket here, again using that star bond, thin quick set, and amazing stuff. I drizzled it into all the little, there's a wound right here, and I've got that all nice and covered, and all of this I reinforced. You can, especially on, if it is bare wood, like you can see right here in the neck pocket, you've got bare wood there, you drizzle that star bond in there and it just burns into the wood, so it really didn't raise the neck pocket at all. It's not any taller than it was, but now it is a lot better reinforced. That wood is going to be harder as that cures. Now I'm going to let it sit overnight before I actually put everything back together. Before I'm just going to let it sit and air out with the neck off. I've got the neck also all set now, and it's actually been sitting a little longer. It's all set to go, and I mean, you can't tell any difference just looking at it, but the holes here for the neck screws, I drizzled. I use the tip of this, of a piece of heavy gauge guitar wire, and after dipping it into the star bond, I drizzle it down into each of the holes and push this in so that it's coating the walls, and so it's not actually filled in. It's not like using wood filler or anything like that, but what it's done is it's burned into the sides and it's filled in a little bit, but now when I drive those screws down, it's really going to bite. Now I'm letting it cure, so it's not gluing the screws in place, but rather it is simply reinforcing the wood to make sure that that neck pocket is nice and tight and there's absolutely no wiggle on the neck.